Well, welcome to our panel discussion here at the House of Rohl showroom. Obviously, we're here to celebrate the launch of the Wow House, and we're going to have a private viewing of the Wow House after this panel discussion. It looks amazing. It really does. It's a fantastic collaborative approach. Works so nicely with House of Rohl's style and approach anyway, which is to collaborate, which makes a lot of sense given the fact that they've worked with Studio Mica to create the Wow House this year, or their segment of the Wow House. And Hotel Designs have been tasked to create this panel and to create this event. So thank you so much for coming. We honestly love working with House of Rohl. They really tell the narrative in a unique way. And there's no greater example of that than recently. I was very excited to go up to their Wolverhampton factory, where I was able to really understand how the products for their Perrin and Rowe brand are made, really understanding the 30 individual components that goes into it. And that was to launch their CPD. So if you yourselves as designers and architects want to be a part of that and experience that amazing experience, then speak to Emily from the brand and Mike as well. So I don't want to babble too much on about House of Rohl. I want to move this conversation on to talk about curating wow moments. So we've got a fantastic panel, and if they wouldn't mind introducing themselves, Abby, would you mind starting?
First time with a microphone, so hopefully okay.
Just hold it close to your face.
I'm Abby Kendler. I'm one of 3 directors at Studio Mica. We predominantly do hospitality design and a little bit of residential.
Fabulous. And Geraldine?
So I'm Geraldine Doyne, founder of Geraldine Doyne Design. We're focusing mainly in hospitality around the world, designing hospitality.
Fabulous. And Jeremy?
Jeremy Blake, founder of Jeremy Blake Architects. Been working in the hospitality sector for quite some time and really enjoy the best sector to work in, really.
Fabulous. And I'm Hamish Kilburn, the editor of Hotel Designs and also the host of 2 podcasts, Design Pod and the Marriott podcast, Travel by Design. So let's start with the ultimate question, which is what does a wow moment translate to in 2023 with everything that we have to consider in terms of materials and I guess the general vibe that we're trying to create with creating a statement without it being too, obvious? Abby, do you want to start?
Sure. Really, to do something wow, I think isn't easy in 2023. I think we are all sort of overly exposed, be it social media, the press. We're constantly flooded with beautiful imagery. So actually to do something different is not easy. So really, and to do something that, gets you that real wow is tricky. And you have to really hit all the senses in one go.
Geraldine, with some of the projects that you've worked on recently, having launched your own studio a few years ago, how have you really allowed statement areas to come into their own authentically and not necessarily work too hard? I think everything you do seems to have a natural progression in terms of answering to nature with design and architecture.
Yes, that's correct. And I think it links directly to the idea of this wow moment, because I think a wow moment is something very subjective. So it links directly to feeling and emotion. And I think that when you have a guest that enters in a space and he feels something different, it's just how you tick all the boxes. That's it.
Yeah, and so generally, on that point, feeling and emotion, we talk about that a lot when it comes to interior design, less so in the architecture process. But that's not, maybe that you can challenge that.
It is, but I think it's a complementary discipline. And I think particularly you're talking about space and volume. But I think when we talk about the wow factor, I think one of the key things is that it's more the unexpected and something I think these days people are looking for something which is also sincere. There's a lot out there which is very instant and impressive, but in fact it's very shallow and doesn't endure. And I think in the hospitality sector, when people go to a hotel, they want something which is personal, but actually goes beyond their experience and expectation.
And in terms of materials, are there any materials that you've used recently in projects that have really allowed the space to pop? Maybe materials that wouldn't necessarily pop but work in the right atmosphere. Javelin, I'm kind of leaning towards you, just in the sense of there's one of the I know you're opening a hotel in November, and we were teased about this project years ago, and the thing that really stood out for us is that things will be, I'm not going to say it correctly, but you were even inspired by just finding or foraging materials.
Yeah, that's what we tend to do for every project in general, in every area of the planet. But I think that also a wow moment can be, I said before, something very emotional and subjective, but also if you're interested in certain trends, and I don't know if I can say sustainability is a trend, it's something that's very important, but if you manage to create a wow space focusing on sustainability throughout the materials, where they come from, how they are made, this is also a way of expressing that wow moment for me.
Abby, let's talk about the Wow House. How have you created, because I don't want to give too much away, but it's not what you would expect a statement area to be. And yet, even just hearing the noise around the space today, it's really become a focal point of the whole installation. So talk to us about how you created that in terms of the materials you used and the vibe that you were trying to achieve.
Thank you.
No,
that's
for sure.
very
I mean,
kind.
There's an editorial understanding. Like, that's genuinely what people are saying.
Thank you. So we have tried to do something different. We have tried to create a bathroom that is not the everyday, expected, domestic, residential. We've really tried to transport you somewhere, tropical. Really, the user, whoever goes in there, you'll take your own experience from it. Over the last day of being in there, we've had people come in and say, "Oh, this reminds me of my trip to Bali. This reminds me of my trip to Japan. This reminds me of my trip to Ibiza." All over the world, which is what we wanted to do. And to that point, like the materials that we've chosen to use, they're not the normal ones. You're going to see cork, you're going to see raffia, you're going to see woven paper, you're going to see clay bricks, things that are quite raw and not polished.
And what was this process like working without necessarily a client, but also under the very tight deadlines that you had to adhere to?
It's been tight. We typically do hotels as well, so you've got a year, 2 years sometimes, and this is felt like 2 months. So it's been quite fast and furious, and it's been a really collaborative effort. So without the support of sort of House and Rohl and some sort of key makers that we've had, with the stone, you'll see there's beautiful marquetry around the bath and these clay bricks. We couldn't have done it without quite a lot of hands, and you'll see when you come inside, it's not a large space either. So there was times when we've had lots of ladders and lots of bodies and not a very large space.
You've touched on collaboration, and I genuinely feel as if to allow these statement areas to really have boldness and real meaning, it helps so much more when there's been a collaborative effort, because you can kind of share the responsibility and build everyone up in terms of like making sure those statement areas really pop. How has the collaboration in recent years been between architect and designer? Has it become tighter? Because that's what it seems to us on the outside looking in. There's a real conversation happening from the start of projects, and how has that allowed these areas to perhaps pop even louder?
Yeah, I think that's quite a strategic point, because I've noticed that more recently, clients in particular with their hotels are really looking to deliver something which exceeds market competition, but also exceeds their own clientele, because they want to retain their clients. And the way in which they're tending to do that now is to really have a more dynamic design approach at the beginning of the project. So we find it quite refreshing now that almost before we've gone through the planning process, we're already having a dialogue with what the interiors, the general expression, the feel of all of the spaces that we're creating, so that it's not just interlinked functional areas, it actually becomes a genuine guest journey, which then delights, and you find it's there right the way through the design, development and dynamic. And I think the sooner that team is brought together, particularly if you've got a client who has really clear vision for what they're wanting to do, it just enables everybody to really bounce ideas off each other and to positively engage and contribute.
There's a lot more pressure on the design team, architects as well, in terms of obviously these hotels are created for certain tribes and communities, to create these statement areas which are really in demand, let's face it, because of social media and because of how brands are amplified, to create them, but also that really speak to the clientele without it coming across gimmicky. How do you ensure you kind of tap into the right balance between creating a statement area that also answers to the guest's demand? Geraldine? You've worked brand side, and obviously you now... I'm really pushing you, sorry.
No. I just think that when you start a project, and what you were saying before, I think it's fabulous that people start to integrate, like clients start to integrate architects and very soon interior designers. What was not done a long time ago, they tend to have the house build, the hotel build, the little hut, and then they say, oh, maybe we should take an interior designer along, which I think is changing, and it's great. Your question was like, how do we make this like continue and everything? I think it's very important when you create a project that you have a true story behind. And when you have this true story, you can create all these moments. You cannot just do a one shot. It has to be a full story that is behind. And this is, I think, the secret.
And that starts obviously with understanding the branding, the brand narrative, the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples, maybe between the three of you, of projects you've worked on where you've gone through that process and then gone down a direction that was perhaps unexpected from the client? Putting you on the spot here, guys.
Yeah, well, I've worked with one client where the design guide was about this fat, and was 50% of it was illustrations, but it wasn't to tell you this is how we're going to do it. It was much more atmospheric, and it was all to do with the sensual response of guests to related to the service, the facilities, the environment in which you were then going to be creating to your specific project. And I think that's now becoming much more, as we've been saying, the approach now with hospitality is it's like spas, isn't it? It's no longer those basic treatments. It's a much more holistic health and well-being approach. It's a more holistic approach. And because of the pressured lives which we're all living with social media and technology and the rest of it, hotels often become those sort of air holes in the ice cap where we want something which just rejuvenates, refreshes, inspires, motivates and refreshes. And I think it's those qualities now which I think hotels are really out there. Even if it's a city centre urban hotel, they're still getting those particular sensual experiences for guests just to really relax and enjoy the hotel they're staying in.
I think it's really apt for this conversation to be happening in a bathroom setting. Bathrooms are definitely becoming the hero shot of many hotel brands. What's driving this narrative? What's driving that demand, would you say?
I think in our experience, we're really seeing the change in the bathroom, as you say, to being can often be the hero shot in publicity. Really, I think it's how the bathroom is being used now. It's not just a functional space that is used in a sort of a quick way. It's really that opportunity to sort of, I think, to your point, to slow down and actually, when you are on holiday, you're not in a hurry to use the bathroom. It actually becomes a relaxation space on its own. And, you're seeing sort of furniture pieces within the bathroom. It's somewhere to sit. It's somewhere to, really just to relax and enjoy your sort of bathroom experience, really.
And from a materials perspective, how much more variety is there now that bathrooms are becoming a bit more playful than they were just practical spaces, a few years ago? Anyone?
I think you have much more selective materials, but I think so people are much more focused on well-being. That's why bathrooms are popping out also a lot. But I think from a designer point of view, it's one of the spaces the hardest to design because you don't have a big selection of materials. We're still very limited. You've got tiles, but tiles, different colors, different shapes, but nothing really innovative. We say we could put some cork, but then the client looks at you, are you sure with cork? Is this okay with water? Is this okay with humidity? Then you go to Asia, you have the issue with wood, with everything. So I think this is also a main reason. If you have a hotel and you have a pop-out bathroom or something really different, it can become a true communication point.
It is challenging. I mean, bathrooms are practical spaces first and foremost, for obvious reasons. It's difficult to add that personality, I guess. Does that start with architecture in terms of...
Well, I think the other interesting fact, I remember being told by a client who was adamant he wanted a window in every bathroom in the hotel, was he said, in your awake time, in your hotel suite, you spend more time in the bathroom with your eyes open than you do with your eyes open in the bedroom. And so I think the bathroom has, if you like, come into it, as we said, because of wellness and also because of guest experience. It's really pushing the parameters now because we're all used to four-piece sanitary ware, whereas that used to be quite novel. Whereas now it's a completely different set of criteria because all of those things are taken almost as granted and it's what you're not expecting. So daylight in an attractive way over a bath, for example, or something which catches you unawares, it is that wow novelty moment in an area which is usually quite claustrophobic and functional if you're not careful.
And I think everyone here can probably share this experience of working with clients that want to now work with these very awkward buildings, these listed buildings that have very awkward bathrooms and awkward shapes, but where no guest room is the same. That obviously enhances the narrative, the design narrative to work harder. There's obviously challenges with that, but what benefits does that give you in terms of, you know, something that would be seen as a weakness, the awkward kind of small bathrooms, for example, and turning that into a project's greatest strength? Have you seen that happen recently? I mean, I know a few brands that are really keen to focus on real estate that is cheaper, but also is not what they would go for a few years ago because of the restraint.
Yeah, the two key things, I think, is the introduction of the bath in the bedroom. So you take the biggest item out and you put it somewhere you're not expecting, and then the bathroom actually becomes a wet room. And when your bathroom becomes a wet room, that sort of physical containment of the activities becomes much more fluid, but doesn't necessarily need to take up a lot of space.
Not just bath, I'm seeing actually the basins as well. I've seen basins move into the guest rooms and bathrooms become larger and guest rooms become smaller. Yeah.
An interface with dressing rooms as well. So wash basins in dressing rooms with bathrooms and then a separate cubicle for a WC and a separate one for a shower or a wet room. You often find that now working so that the space is all put in your main bedroom area.
Abby, what do you hope clients can learn from what you've created in the Wow House? What can brands kind of take from it in terms of what you think's really worked?
Hopefully it's just doing something a little bit different and to not be nervous to stick with the norm and to sort of challenge the norm, really, be it with the materials, be it with to the small spaces and how much you can fit in, and you'll see in our space we've tried to sort of bring quite a lot of greenery in as well, which I appreciate it's not always practical in every hotel depending on which part of the world you're in, but how much that also sort of affects the user's mood and general overall experience of a bathroom.
And I understand you've tried to create it with 3 separate areas with no boundaries, obviously. Yeah. But what were the ideas behind each areas, and how do you hope that they create a holistic experience?
So that's correct. We've tried to create 3 different zones within our again very small space. The bath area, we've tried to have that as a sort of cocooned, private, very enclosed space. We've lowered the ceiling, we've raised the floor, we've added some curtains, and you sort of dimmed the lights in there, so that to be a sort of a luxury bathing experience. And then at the other end of the room, we've tried to give you this outdoor showering experience, which we would all love in London. It's not entirely real. maybe not. But and also the twin shower as well. So that's something we're seeing, as a trend, where you're looking to sort of differentiate a sort of a standard room perhaps from a more luxury room or a suite. That's something we're trying to get sort of double showers in, body jets, and anything that sort of elevates the room from the norm. And then in the central part we've added which is holding the vanity basin, but it's a massage plinth, so that's more getting a sort of spa experience into the bathroom. It's really just to give you that hotel resort experience and really take you out of the domestic and out of the residential.
And you've already mentioned the material cork within the bathroom. Geraldine, you've just mentioned that can be quite difficult to persuade clients. Is there any, a lot of that comes down to naivety from clients perhaps, in terms of like the real sort of benefits and the qualities of a material like cork. Do you think that will change, or will that always be the case, do you think, in terms of how clients perceive you suggesting a material like cork in the bathroom?
I think it comes also from the side of the supplier, if I may say. Well, we're not really able to convince that it will be super resistant, that it will last in time, that you can spill water on it and everything. So I think it's, again, this supplier side that needs to make a bit more, not effort, but a bit more technical info on all these products that are completely suitable for that area, and push a bit more on that side, because I think they all work. You can do everything as long as you protect materials. You could use everything in the bathroom for me, but we just need more that technical side to support.
Could that also come from architects as well, suggesting it early on as a material? We work with a number of brands that really go hard on cork, and we just see the value, not only in the bathroom, obviously, in terms of like the whole area, but it's definitely a material, I think, that's not used enough in hotel design.
We're working on a hotel with a particular client at the minute where his key objective is to deliver a net zero carbon hotel. So therefore aren't they all? But the key thing is, though, that in doing it, it means you're totally focused on every material, every finish you're considering, as well as the overall performance of the building from an environmental standard, is coming from a ecologically sustainable or environmentally positive source, and is all contributing to that factor. And I think the market's becoming increasingly savvy and discerning in that regard. So it's quite interesting where you're now finding that increasingly, that it's not only being driven by the hotel client, but you're actually finding that the guests are now becoming quite demanding and discerning in just, what's this made, where has it come from? And the younger the generation, the more discerning they are.
And do you know what? Above sort of environmentally, it just allows the design to sink deeper, as you've kind of just mentioned. Yep. And that, I think, is the true value of really, researching new materials and understanding how things are made as well, because it just resonates more, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what we were saying at the beginning. That's a genuine wow factor, because it's something which has got credibility and depth to it. It's not just a surface, glib acknowledgement. It's something which is actually totally in the whole DNA of a particular guest experience. And of course, the positive thing is we all know that without all of these plastics and artificial coatings, the air quality that you're breathing in your stay is fundamentally different. So it's a bit like going to the seaside. You don't appreciate it, but actually, it's completely rejuvenating your body just by the air quality that these natural materials are producing.
Absolutely. Moving this conversation on beyond potentially the bathroom, but let's talk about sensory design. I would just sort of urge you to walk into the Wow House later, not necessarily with your eyes closed throughout the whole place, but when you walk into the House of Rohl Studio Mica, just sort of close your eyes and just take in the smell. It's a really interesting scent that you've decided. It's very difficult to make those decisions when scent is so personal, but we're seeing it obviously in a lot of hotels. So what were the decisions with that scent that you went for?
Do you want the honest answer?
Yes, absolutely. Spill the tea.
There was a choice of 6. I mean, we didn't design the centre. This was produced by Chelsea Harbour, but it's very, the whole sensory experience is very important. And you'll see when you come into our bathroom, we've got a ceiling fan in there as well, and that was something that was really important to us because that changes the air quality because it's quite stuffy down there, and it also, I think it gives you that experience of being not in the UK necessarily, and it's moving the air about you. If you do, as you say, sort of sit in there and close your eyes, I think you automatically sort of switch off. And to that point, the cork floor is doing the same thing. You step in,
as well.
exactly. You're not stepping onto a hard stone. You're not stepping onto a hard tile. The cork is sort of muting all the sound in there, as are all the other surfaces. There is only one wall in there which has got which is the behind the showers where we've got the clay brick tile. Every other surface is actually a soft surface, and I think that's what makes it calming when you get in.
And then creating statement areas is one thing, but let's talk about the in-between moments and elements in order to link those spaces with the rest of the hotel and the rest of the design narrative. How do we face that challenge of creating a statement area, but it being cohesive with the rest of the design? Geraldine?
I think a good analogy is it's like beads on a necklace. So you concentrate on those larger spaces and those specific experiences, whether it be the bathroom or the bedroom or public area. But your journey to get from or between those spaces is brief and fleeting, but it needs to be one which is complementary, doesn't detract and doesn't, if you like, diminish. If anything, it's almost like the Baroque experience. You go into something tight to accentuate the bigger space that you're going into. So it's a trick which we often overlook because we just think, well, we've done this part, but the journey in a hotel all contributes to the total guest experience, because otherwise it just becomes disjointed things, which then become isolated.
It's pretty tricky though when you think about all these innovative surfaces that are out there, like for example going back to cork, to be able to create that area and then answer to the rest of the hotel. I guess it's around zoning and careful choice of materials and obviously like placement as well.
I think it can also be linked because we were talking about smell, but you've got these details like smell, like lighting. You can have this intensity of light that follows you, that brings you throughout this journey. The sound also, the music. And so you're more traveling this journey, dreaming this journey with light, music and smell, and you don't realize, like you see it way less, this transition of materials, and that's how you link it all together.
Perfect. Well, I think it's just about time to head down to the Well House. We have some more canapes and more drinks, so we'll get those out and then we'll make our way down to the Well House together to experience the space collectively. Can we have a round of applause, please, to our amazing panel? Obviously, thank you to House of Rohl, Emily and the team. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's get the champagne flowing.